if this was the old days, and because we're broadcasting on KNGN and we're kind of covered by their broadcast license, I would have used the theme for Chosen to come back from the break. But it's YouTube, and YouTube doesn't actually care about other people's licenses if they have. So they'll just copyright strike you. It doesn't matter if you've got, like, the church does streams. Okay. So
Sure.
Of course we do. All churches do. So they're singing, what amounts to a Beethoven tune. I bet you can't guess which one it is. Joyful, joyful, we adore thee.
Oh, joy, exactly.
And we got it's not a copyright strike, but we got a copyright notification because there is another song that purports to be copyrighted that has that melody in it. And I sent him back a notice saying, no, it's public domain. It's been public domain for a really long time. In fact, here's the references that says that it's public domain. Got no response back. The notification is still there. They just don't care.
I guess not. I don't know.
They don't care. So the songs that I use on this is either stuff that I've done personally,
right,
or it's from the YouTube audio. There's an audio
creator library.
Yeah, and that's nice. There's some good stuff in there. But I kind of miss being able to put just put like the theme for Chosen or something else in there. I miss it. I don't know why that came up.
Well,
maybe
you came back from the break and you're just free associating.
Yeah, well,
I guess.
Okay. Stop pulling the curtain back. We don't want people to know that the wizard is controlled by the puppet hands. We don't want that. We want everybody to think that this is a look. The thing is like people are super self-aware and they're not cynical per se, but I'm pretty sure that they understand what's going on a show like this one. Of course, we're free associating, but look, it's only because I'm actually looking for a place to say, like, if you want to be serious, I'm looking for a place to like segue into the conversation. And the only reason I'm still talking is because I haven't found a good one yet.
I'll help you.
So what I'll do is I'll just toss it to you and say, maybe you can come up with a segue.
You don't have to be Mr. Wizard to know how to do this. So we're talking about the Sunday coming up is, but the Sunday coming up is a Sunday. It's Pentecost, the Feast of Pentecost. And there's a lot of things that we've talked about over the years and a lot of good dimensions to bring out about it, both in terms of the Acts account of what happened and the rushing wind, and then the tongues of fire that separated, and what each one of the disciples has this manifestation, and they're speaking in languages, and you can just like go to town on that. But this year, the Old Testament lesson is kind of interesting because it brings out something about God's Spirit being placed on people, not in the same way as when the church comes into existence, because that seems to be a different manifestation as far as the Spirit dwelling within us and among us. This is more of the idea of the Spirit rests on certain individuals for the task that they have to do. And that's pretty evident when you are looking in the Old Testament. And in this case, we're going to turn to the book of Numbers, chapter 11. And so maybe the listeners can take a moment and get out your Bible or your app, and you can go to Numbers chapter 11. And well, I know that the whole chapter is good context, but what I'd really like to do is kind of jump into the middle of it a little bit, because while it's all useful, there's a point where Moses is just tearing his hair out. Okay. The children of Israel are just, he is so over it. And he's starting to wonder, what the Lord expects him to be able to do about this situation. Yeah. Because he's just one dude, and the children of Israel, they are a demanding bunch of folks. So
That's an understatement.
yeah,
So I was just thinking about all of those paintings and wood etchings that I've seen over the years that show Moses is kind of bald. I wonder why.
well, so there's a in Numbers chapter 11, and if you begin at verse 11, Moses is going to have a bit of a heart to heart with the Lord. Yeah. Well, he's going to, you're going to hear in a second that Moses kind of has a legitimate complaint. So he wants to like lay it out there. So would you read from verse 11, through the end of 15, I guess.
Okay. So Moses said to the Lord, "Why have you dealt ill with your servant? And why have I not found favor in your eyes that you lay the burden of all this people on me? Did I conceive these people? Did I give them birth that you should say to me, carry them in your bosom as a nurse carries a nursing child to the land that you swore to give to their fathers? Where am I to get meat to give all these people? For they weep before me and say, give us meat that we may eat. I'm not able to carry all this people alone. The burden is too heavy for me. If you will treat me like this, kill me at once, if I find favor in your sight, that I may not see my wretchedness."
Okay. This is a guy totally melting down. Again, he sort of has a legitimate reason because, the idea that the children of Israel, think of a 3-year-old throwing a tantrum. Give me meat. Give me something to eat. I'm hungry. I'm wet. I need help.
I think of it worse than that. It's like a Monty Python sketch where it's like, they're all sitting around and they're going, yeah, well, what do you want to do tonight? So I don't know. I said, you think we ought to eat? And said, yeah. So what do we do? I don't know. Ask Moses. Let's go ask Moses. Where's the meat? Or the old Burger King thing. Where's the beef?
Moses is dealing with people they are weeping and they're griping and they're quarreling and they're angry. And yeah, I get it. Like they're having a Snickers moment. When you're hungry, you get this way, right? That's what the advertising is.
You're hangry, yeah.
Yeah, you're hangry. So they're really throwing a tantrum, and Moses is trying to figure out what to do with this. So he's going to come before the Lord. And as you said, why have you dealt ill with your servant? Why have you basically dealt me this hand, treated me this badly? And why have, what did I do to deserve all this? So especially with these people that they are just too much. They're over the top.
They just seem to expect someone else to do.
And they expect it like we can come to Moses and Moses is obligated to figure out everything for us. And this is why he says, did I conceive all these people? Oh, these are basically saying, are these my kids? Did I give them birth that you should say to me, hey, you got to carry them around, like they're carrying them on your hip everywhere. And, as a nurse nurses a child, Moses is like, am I really, you've got me doing this babysitting job. That's what it is. And they are not nice kids. They're acting like babies. I feel like I'm a nursing mother and I wasn't cut out for that.
He's gone for 5 minutes up the mountain and they're already building an idol.
Well, they're saying they want meat to eat. We talked here recently on this show about water from the rock and we want something to drink. And now they want meat. And he's saying to the Lord in verse 14, this burden is too heavy for me. This is wearing me down. And in verse 15, he says, if you're going to treat me like this, at least do me the favor of killing me now. That's basically what he's saying. So,
there's these colloquial things that come up, where someone says, shoot me now or kill me now or whatever.
Yeah.
And you don't realize that it's as old as this.
So, but the Lord, the Lord hears the complaint it is a legitimate, complaint. There is a real situation that has to be dealt with. So the Lord tells Moses how he's going to deal with it. And so now would you pick up at verse 16 and read, don't read the whole thing. Just read through the end of verse 17. That'll be enough.
Okay. Then the Lord said to Moses, gather for me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the elders of the people and officers over them, and bring them to the tent of meeting, and let them take their stand there with you. And I will come down and talk with you there. And I will take some of the spirit that is on you and put it on them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with you, so that you may not bear it yourself alone.
Okay, so he's going to get some help, basically. He's going to get somebody to bear the burden with him. And for that reason, some of the spirit is called here is going to be taken and of the same spirit placed on them. So they're going to be legitimate, in other words, right?
Right.
How many people are we talking about that he's going to get for helpers?
Well, it says 12. I mean,
no,
it doesn't say that. You're right.
No, it says in verse 16.
Right.
What does it say?
Well, it says 70 men of the elders of Israel.
Okay, so 70 men of the elders of Israel, now here's the thing, whom you know to be the elders of the people. So they're like, that implies a sort of recognition, and they are the elders of their people and officers over them. That sounds like they kind of hold already among the people some standing, right? They're recognizable. And of these, you're going to take 70 of them and you're going to bring them to the tent of meeting. So that's where this is all going to happen. You're going to be there with them. They're going to be there. We're all going to be around the tent of meeting. I'm going to come down. I'm going to talk to you. And then I'm going to take some of you, the spirit that's on you, and place it on them. Okay. And that sounds just great. Except, well, then Moses gives some instructions to the children of Israel and tells them what's going to happen, and the Lord is going to give them meat, and you're going to eat, and it's going to be. Then he actually tells them about how that's going to go, going forward. But in the meantime, it says, so Moses in verse 24, Moses went out and told the people the words of the Lord, and he gathered 70 men of the elders of the people and placed them around the tent. Okay, let's stop there. So how many did he gather?
It says 70.
Okay. How many was he told to gather?
He was told to gather 70.
And he placed them around the tent. Doesn't say that he tried to get them to go around the tent, but he placed them around the tent, right? Then the Lord came down, so he comes down in a cloud and spoke to him, and just like he said he would, took some of the spirit that was on him, Moses, and put it on the 70 elders. Mm-hmm. And as soon as the spirit rested on them, they prophesied, right? Moses at this point has been God's prophet, but now these are also given certain kind of legitimacy. They are, for the time being, prophesying. And that's how you can sort of tell that it's the same spirit as what was on Moses. They are speaking on the Lord's behalf, the words the Lord gives them. That's kind of what it means here. But it says, look at the interesting thing at the end of that verse. As soon as the Spirit rested on them, they prophesied, but they did not continue doing it. So after a while of doesn't know how long they're there at the tent of meeting, but apparently they're only prophesying for a while, and then they quit prophesying. And well, Moses is still left being God's spokesman, God's prophet. So he still has this uniqueness about him. Now here's the interesting part. Meanwhile, back at the camp, right? If you will pick up the reading at verse 26 and go to the end of 28. I know the reading goes on farther, but just go to 26 through 28.
Okay, so now 2 men remained in the camp, one named Eldad and the other named Medad, and the Spirit rested on them. They were among those registered, but they had not gone out to the tent of meeting, so they prophesied in the camp. And a young man ran and told Moses, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp. And Joshua, the son of Nun, the assistant of Moses from his youth, said, My lord Moses, stop them.
Okay, let's pause there. So there's two men, and they remained in the camp. They did not go out to the tent of meeting, but their names were Eldad and Medad, right? What does it say about them? They were among those registered. So registered, in some sense, formally recognized, but they had not gone out to the tent. And so, well, they also had the Spirit apparently rest on them because they prophesied as well, but in the camp, right, where they kind of got left behind. Now, that's an interesting question. So did all 70 go out to the tent of meeting, or did only 68 go out, or how do we square that? And I think that a lot of Christians have not known what to do with that because clearly these were among the ones registered, and so they're legit, but for whatever reason that people can't quite square, they're not where the action's happening or supposed to be happening out at the tent of meeting. Instead, for those two, just those two, the action is happening right there in the camp, right? It's still the same effect. Well, how do we explain what this is about? And I did a little poking into this and researching, and the rabbis have I think a pretty good understanding of it. Some Christian preachers have also commented, and I think that they're onto the right idea, that we know how many that the Lord said they were supposed to bring out and meet with Moses and God at the tent of meeting. It's going to be 70, right? 70 are going to be gathered and they're going to do this. Okay. Of those who are, like we already said, it sounds like if they're officers or they're men of standing and elders in the community, they're recognizable. They are known. Well, let me ask you a question, Matthew. How many tribes of Israel are there?
There's 12.
12 tribes.
Right.
So one way to ask this next question is, how many times does 12 go into 70 evenly? But I'll put it this way instead, is that if Moses had chosen 6 from every tribe, how many would he have? 6 times 12 is 72.
Yeah.
72. Right. 72.
Right.
If he'd only chosen 5 from every tribe, well, then he'd only have 60, right? So he needs to have 70, and now Moses has got a kind of a problem here. You need 70 because they was told you got to bring 70 with you out to the tent of meeting, but you're going to go through the tribes of Israel, and some tribes get 6 elders or people who are recognized, and some only get 5. And my goodness, Moses, who said you could play favorites like that, right? Mm-hmm. This is the rabbis have what they see happened, and this sounds like a plausible solution, is that Moses did look and see who were the chief ones, the elders, you might say, the recognized leadership of the different tribes. And so he does try to take exactly the same number, not playing any favorites, 6 from each tribe of the 12 tribes. That makes 72. But he can't take 72 out with him to the tent of meeting because he was told to only bring 70, right? That was the instructions. So then the rabbis have a conjecture about what we would call almost a lottery system. That's not exactly what they're describing, but it's a way that it randomizes in a way that 2 of them won't be picked to go out to the tent of meeting. So let's just say that Eldad and Medad were registered. They were among those who were recognized, and you make a list and these are the people, and they're legit in that respect, but their names didn't come up for going out to the tent of meeting. So where do they get left?
They get left back in the camp.
Right, they get left
Right.
behind in the camp. So now there's still going to be a puzzle here. It's not like this is going to solve everything, but then the rest of it transpires out at the tent of meeting, and the Spirit comes on these 70 elders, rests on them, and they prophesied, but they didn't continue doing it. Like they kind of had their moment, you might say, but it was short lived.
Something to show that the Spirit is on them. Yeah.
Right. Now I stopped you at the end of 28 or at the end of 27, but I just want to go back to there for a second. So those two, Eldad and Medad, they're prophesying in the camp, and a young man ran and told Moses. And the rabbis also say the young man, who isn't named in scripture, but maybe they got extra traditions. Evidently they do. They say this is actually Moses' son, that Moses himself has a family and he's got a son, and it's the son that comes running out to the tent of meeting to tell dad, basically narc on these guys that seem like they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing. And he ran and told Moses, Eldad and Medad are prophesying. Not that they did prophesy, but they are prophesying in the camp. And Joshua, the son of Nun, he's the guy who's Moses' assistant. He says, my Lord, Moses, stop them. In other words, put a stop to it, because they didn't
weren't picked.
Well, they weren't. Well, that's part of what Joshua, son of Nun, is thinking, is that he wasn't supposed to include them. And look, the Lord did what he wanted to do and did include them. The other thing about it is that the others only had their brief shining moment, and then they stopped prophesying. But as nearly as you can tell, the prophesying started in the camp long enough. It kept going long enough that somebody noticed, and the young man, whoever he is, runs out. And basically Joshua's like, Moses, they're still doing it. Stop them. They are prophesying. So there's a difference too. It seems like they're not having as brief an experience. They're like continuing on in this role longer than they ought to be, because they weren't even out at the tent of meeting. And well, what gives them the right, that kind of thing.
What's this all about?
Yeah, what's this about? And Moses comes back and he has a pretty strong answer, because Joshua, he's just reacting, and that's what people are going to do sometimes. Something weird comes up and they'll just react. But Moses says to him, hey, Joshua, wait a minute. Are you jealous for my sake? Because it's kind of a big deal if I'm the only one who's the prophet, the spokesman for the Lord. And the 70 got their moment, but they stopped already. And yet there's two more that they're kind of still doing the prophecy gig. And well, does that make it sound like I'm not the only one conceivably who can speak for the Lord? So are you jealous about my position for my sake? Like I should be guarding it better? Would that all the Lord's people were prophets. That's the thing that Moses comes back with, is like, this isn't something that I should just camp on, or like I should say, nope, that's mine. I get to be the big guy, the big cheese. I get to say the things for the Lord, and that's something exclusive. I got exclusive rights to it. He's like, no. I wish they were all being prophets, all the Lord's people, and that the Lord would put his Spirit on them, meaning all of them. And so, well, that's something that Moses can wish. It kind of shows that he is not as wrapped up in his own self-importance as maybe Joshua thought he ought to be. This might, there's always a laughable part where you get to the end of Deuteronomy and Moses has died and the Lord buries him in an undisclosed place and is talking about his legacy. And he says that Moses was the most humble man that ever lived. And everybody kind of laughs. It's like, yeah, well, if Moses is the one writing this, kind of tells the lie that he's the most humble because he's just praising himself. But on the other hand, maybe there's something to this humility that, it doesn't have to be about me. It can be about all the Lord's people. Would that they were all prophets. And I'm trying to figure out what that means, because what that means is that we have to look at, first of all, the Lord can do what he wants to do as he wishes to do it. So if the Lord would like to put somebody in a position where this is going to be my spokesperson, it can be for, well, like a career of it. That's what basically Moses did. Or it can be for a brief time, a short time, or maybe a little longer. And maybe they have the outward authority. It's a little bit confusing because in some respects they did have outward authority. They were chosen. Everybody did recognize that those two who were left in the camp had every bit as much right, you might say, to be at the tent of meeting as the others. But because you're doing this sort of by lots, then that doesn't mean that Moses is choosing you get to go, but you have to stay behind, or anybody else is. If you're doing it by lots, the ancient mind is thinking, God is influencing that. God is putting people where he wants them to be. And he knows how the lots are going to work. Now, it isn't exactly lots that they're choosing, but think of it that way. So maybe God has a reason why these two especially ought to be left back in the camp. And then for them to also continue perhaps longer in that prophetic role than any of the other 70 did. It's almost as if they were singled out, not for being passed over, but almost like they were getting singled out for some special attention. Something to consider, but it's clear that what God's Spirit does is God's Spirit can rest on a person, or in our case, there's an indwelling. It's more than just resting on a person. And the Spirit has gifts that he can give that person, especially gifts that are going to be useful for the building up of God's people. It's not just to prophesy because you get a kick out of doing it and it makes you look good. So
it could also be, and I'm not contradicting you, but it could also be that Moses is, after all of the trouble of dealing with the people all by himself, that he's glad that there's two more. and he wishes that there were more still that could come along. Because, being a prophet, I mean, come on, what happened to all the prophets?
Yeah, they didn't have such a good time.
Yeah, it wasn't such a great time. So that's a thing that, yep, be nice if they were all prophets. And then maybe they would understand